Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. So I kind of want to share something that I discovered regarding AFMF 2 that it's finally been merged to the main adrenaline branch and it's no longer in beta, which is pretty cool. And the thing is, AFMF 2 introduced something called search mode, in which in the previous AFMF iteration, essentially the first one, it had this thing where the more movement there was on game, it would reduce the amount of frames. It kind of had like a fallback feature in which, in order to preserve the image quality, it would reduce the amount of frames, essentially just kind of pulling it back to the base frame rate, which wasn't very cool. But regardless, they introduced search mode, and basically the way search mode works is if you set it to auto, playing games at 1080p, it will do its best to preserve the image quality by essentially just having the fallback feature that it had before. But once you start playing at 1440p and higher resolutions, it'll be like, we're not gonna reduce as much. So all of the jitters that we would experience before are essentially mitigated. But I do want to emphasize that it's really just mitigation, because the fallback still occurs, and I'm going to show you. So this is an example of Yakuza 3. I'm going to set the FPS cap to 30 FPS, which is not going to be a good experience, but I want to show you guys what I'm experiencing right now. So as you can see here, base frame rate 30, but generated frames 60. So let's go back. Now, generally speaking, if we do some like light movements, it's true. It's not actually falling back a lot. Like, if we were talking about the previous hang on. That's interesting. But yeah, if we were talking about the previous version of AFMF, like just doing this would be enough to just completely reduce. But if you move enough, which like this, it will start to fall back. As you can see there, it starts to do it. And now it's on 30. And then if I stop, it'll start reverting back to, it's taking a bit. Okay, there it is. It's going back to 60. Now, the thing is, for general gameplay, it's very likely that I wouldn't notice this, because, it's very unlikely that you're going to move the camera like this at all times. Probably not. But yeah, like this is an example of, the fallback feature still exists even if you set search mode to like high. But I did notice, and because the thing is, I'd highlighted this before on my other video regarding AFMF 2, when I was still testing the beta. But something that I actually did not know is if you go to graphics and you set the FPS cap to 60, and let's actually apply the settings. Yes, go back. Now, right now, it's running at 60 FPS, 120. Now, let's do the exact same fucking thing. And it's not falling back at all. Like, it's just not doing it. Maybe it will at some point. Now I'm kind of curious to see if maybe after some time it will. But at least right now, it's not fucking doing it. And if we were running this game at 30 FPS, it would have started to fall back. But right now, it's just not. At all. It doesn't give a shit. And so basically what this means is the algorithm for falling back is not just based on resolution. Because it makes sense for resolutions, because, the more pixel you have, the easier it's going to be to reconstruct the image quality. It's kind of... It kind of reminds me of FSR, in which, the lower the resolution is, the worse it's going to be. And I assume that recreating frames follows a similar philosophy, in which the more pixel it has, the easier it's going to be. So maybe the fallback feature isn't going to, be as frequent. But now I'm noticing that actually this also applies to how many frames it's being rendered. So right now, again, if I do this, it's just not going to fucking do anything. But if we were running the game at 30 FPS, oh wow, it would not be fun. Now, the thing is, for this to be the case, then I guess the stance that we used to hold before still holds up, which is that you really only should use AFMF if you're running games at 60 FPS base frame rate. Which, to be honest with you, it's not the most ideal thing for me personally, because if I'm being honest with you, if I'm already getting a game to run at 60 FPS, I'm probably just not going to enable frame generation at all, because I would much rather have a consistent frame rate that, you know, is consistent with the amount of input latency, because that's something that you have to deal with when you're enabling any type of frame generation. I would much rather not deal with any potential motion artifacts that come as a result of that. But regardless, you know, if you do have a high refresh rate monitor, then, you know, at the end of the day, you are still getting quote unquote free frames, and, you know, at some point, the higher the frame rate becomes, the less noticeable the input latency is gonna become. So, I would still say that this is interesting, like, because for me personally, like previously, I just thought that, hey, you know, at least in this example, you're kind of fucked. It would still fall back, but now knowing that at least if you have the base frame rate of 60, then it won't fall back, which is good to learn. Um, yeah, but I think in the end, it's good. It's good to know about that. So, yeah, I guess that's all I really wanted to share, because I didn't notice this before, but I'm noticing it right now, I guess.